Welcome to Future Foodcast. I'm Pam Miller, your host. Have you ever thought about the manufacturing process? And we think about how products are made, but do you know that in addition to the products that are intentionally made in the manufacturing products, there are other outcomes that we can also have? We're going to dive into that today with Lydia Oxley. She's the president of Renewal Mill. Welcome to the show, Lydia.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today. Delighted to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear about what Renewal Mill is doing to really utilize all the resources that we have available to us. Will you share a little bit about your company?
Yeah, absolutely. So Renewal Mill is a woman-owned company. It was founded in 2016, and our biggest focus is on creating new ingredients. This is on the consumer food side through our own brand, and then we also sell these ingredients B2B. And what we do is we pull from within the manufacturing system. So what that means is a lot of our major manufacturing systems for things like plant-based milk or even corn milling can actually be a little bit wasteful. So for instance, if you look at something like oat milk, what's processed out of oats when they become oat milk is the natural protein and fiber of the plant. So we take that material, it's usually in like a pulp form, and we dry and mill that into a flour. And that flour is naturally gluten-free. It's also really high in protein and fiber, because if you remember, that's what we're taking and drying out.
Yeah.
So we have similar processes across all of our ingredients. But the biggest common kind of through thread that we have with these is that they are coming from the middle of the manufacturing system, and they're made from material that would otherwise be wasted, but has a lot of these amazing qualities that are kind of tangible and inherent in the product.
I think that's the exciting part. Like this material would normally be discarded in some way because it would be considered, extra, not needed in this manufacturing process that we're going through intentionally right here in this plant. But you're able to take those products and utilize them. But sometimes that's not an easy process, right? Because there's a timing issue here on some of them as far as spoilage, and you've got
Yeah.
to be Johnny on the spot.
Absolutely. And so what we really try to do with our manufacturers is make sure that we're paired very, very closely, because this material, and one of the big reasons why it's gone to waste in the past, is because it does go bad very quickly. We have about 4 hours on average to stabilize and dry out our product in order to make it workable. So that presents a lot of different challenges in just moving quickly in a process that otherwise can move very slowly. So we're super thankful to have partners that are joined along with us and dedicated to improving these processes to make a quality product every time.
Yeah, and you work with some leading manufacturers that are happy to be doing something usable with this quote unquote extra to their manufacturing process. So I know that helps with their sustainability goals too. I mean, they don't want to waste product on purpose if there's a use for it.
Absolutely. And manufacturing waste is a really interesting one within the grand scheme of food waste in our country. So if you look at food waste numbers, an organization called ReFed is very dedicated in reporting these numbers. Now, historically, manufacturing waste has actually been reported as a smaller piece of the pie when it comes to wasted food across grocery, retail, distribution, and even our homes. But as we look at reporting and as it becomes more complex and more encouraged within this system, we are seeing a higher level of manufacturing waste taking place. So that makes it really important to know the ceiling of what you're impacting, but also kind of the intricacies in that and how reporting has had to kind of come a long way, because manufacturing is an industry where, very unlike our homes, you're not parking your trash in your driveway necessarily. People are not looking at this in the same way that they would look at restaurant waste or even home waste. So it's a very different, oftentimes consolidated and secretive industry.
Right. And I think it's a good place for us to look, though. I mean, even without the additional analytics that are coming out of the manufacturing process, our food waste numbers are just unacceptable. So it's really great to identify some additional food waste that can be reclaimed essentially and reused. Now, how do you figure out what to do with it? Like how to formulate it? I don't know if you're a scientist or what your background is. I think you probably call in professional help.
We do indeed. We have an amazing 5-time James Beard Award winner named Alice Medrick. She actually invented the American truffle. She is a legend among us. And so when these ingredients were first being made at an industrial scale, so if we think about okara, which is the flour that's made from the pulp from making soy milk. So basically it's like a soy flour, or even oat milk flour, which as mentioned earlier, that's the protein and fiber from oat milk. These are like pretty brand new ingredients. So okara has been around for a while, but it really only has had applications in things like okonomiyaki. It's a very traditional cultural Asian food. And so if we look at kind of the new applications and how can this be made into maybe a focaccia or something different. And then you have something like oat milk flour that's a brand new ingredient. You're taking something that is very unknown and needing to make it workable. And that's really where Alice comes in. So she first of all makes these ingredients workable. Maybe she makes a special blend like a 1-to-1 AP flour, or maybe she's just looking at like, how does the moisture affect the density of a bread that comes out of this? Because it's a brand new thing to work with. What I love about her is she's such a chef and such an artist, but she's also extremely technical. I come from a pretty traditional brand marketing background, so I've really had to kind of catch up to the curve of baking knowledge within the organization. And seeing how Alice works with even some of the most scientific R&D professionals, we're able to do something that is both creative and also something that is very scientifically focused to really look more at like feasibility and scalability of the product. So she's been super helpful in that sense as well.
Yeah, I think that scalability piece is really key. And that's probably why she's so technical and specific, is because, it might not matter with one batch of something, but when you scale that and you're just a little bit off on how the moisture might affect the outcome, then it just mushrooms, right? And so, yeah, that's great that she has those characteristics. And we've had a rise in some of the, I'll call them alternative ingredients like oat, like soy. A lot of people are moving away from wheat for different reasons. And so it is newer. It is newer for experimentation, and great that she has some experience that she can bring to that. And I'm sure you have some great R&D scientists that are also helping along the way, because this is a big project. Well, what are some of the advantages? I mean, to the manufacturer that's giving you this material, or you're getting, you're actually being able to utilize it. So before, they would have to pay to have it disposed of. I mean, I don't know I don't really have a window into that. Like you said, it's kind of been a secret part of manufacturing. We don't really know what happens with all that.
It's an extremely diverse world, even within manufacturing. So what some manufacturers will do is they just throw it out within their normal waste streams.
Okay.
Others might have like a handshake deal with the farmer down the street and use it for agricultural feed. I spent a little bit of time in agriculture and was shocked to find that a lot of our major byproducts that go into animal feed are usually just like back of the napkin kind of handshake deals. So a lot of these things, if they aren't going straight to a landfill and they're being used for animal feed, it's not necessarily an established byproduct or side stream. Now, that being said, there are some industries that have done a really good job working with their side streams. The citrus industry is amazing at this. So if you look at like lemon peels or orange peels, those are a pretty critical element in a lot of our cleaning products. Similarly, if you're looking at something like zest, that has a whole industry as well. And so they've done a really good job kind of over the years of looking at ways to make money off of those side streams, and they've become kind of a commodity in themselves. However, if we're looking at something like oat milk and soy milk, compared to the orange industry, this is very, very new. And so it takes a lot of time to develop those applications, and also find the partnerships and even the way to utilize and create the product that makes it move a little bit slower. So every stream is super different. Every manufacturer is super different. And so we really have to look at each stream as its own story, which is something that we talk about a lot.
Okay, nice. And I'm excited to hear that we're moving on from the back of the cocktail napkin into
Yes,
more
I
formal
hope
business
so.
relationships.
Yeah,
Although,
yeah.
I mean, You think about, and we're here in the United States, although our show is seen and heard worldwide, but so we're a little focused on that. But I think it's true across the world. Farmers normally have been part of your community. And so, as manufacturers grew up in those communities, then they would make those agreements. People did business with each other right in the local area. So the fact that things have gotten so big, I'm not sure a lot of that changed a whole lot, just depending on how it went. But and technology is helping us to make better connections as well, and knowing what available resources are out there. So that's great. Well, what is happening with your products then? So you've got these products that you're creating, or these ingredients that you're creating. You do both ingredients and products, because you do
Yes, we're on
B2B as
both
well as
sides.
B2C. Yeah,
Yes, we're
share
on
a little
both
bit
sides.
about that. Yeah, what's
Well, I love it because we get to be friends with everybody. So if
okay.
we kind of look at our category within CPG, we sit pretty squarely within the baking category. So we sell flour and then we also sell baking mixes. Now, that being said, we kind of see our core ingredients being a part of our CPG as kind of this like Intel inside model. So we use our CPG to really build familiarity with those ingredients, to build trial with those ingredients. Trial for something like this is incredibly important. On the R&D side, if you're working at a large CPG, you want to know that this tastes good. And so we love whenever we're sending an ingredient to also be able to send over a baking mix and be like, this is what we've been able to do with it, or point to another brand. And it's kind of scary to be an R&D professional working with a new ingredient because it might work great in your pilot, but then as you're scaling it up and putting it into actual production, it might behave entirely differently. So people take on really a lot of trust and faith in our products super early on, especially knowing that they're so new. Our customers previously within ingredients, some of their main questions were always, do you have the HACCP plan associated with this? Do you have the specs associated with this? Like very baseline questions. More of the questions that we get now are, can you scale up to truckloads? Can you do the volumes that I'm looking for? And so then that's even happened, I would say, in the last year. And that's a really big development and a really big sign of us maturing as a business, that we have that credibility that people are asking those questions rather than the baseline questions. So it really just shows how if you can get to a point of scaling within ingredients, it's a really exciting industry to be in, even if it's not as kind of consumer facing and flashy as CPG often is. So I love both sides for that reason.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that's just your whole relationship growth is just moving from, initially they are just trying to figure out, can I trust what's happening here? I need to see the facts of what's being produced. And then now you're moving into more of that partnership. Well, okay, can I depend on them to provide this quantity scale up with me, and because they've kind of proven that baseline. So that's really fun. Well, there are also, we have a term out there, which I don't know that everybody thinks of it in a positive way, but as they hear this particular show, you can really think about upcycling in a positive way, because that's really kind of what we're doing here. You're taking something that is a side stream or a byproduct of a regular manufacturing product, and you're using that for real food and real products. And technically, that's like the definition of upcycling, I guess. But you can get certified for that. I mean, you have some different certifications, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. We're a pretty heavily certified product, especially on the CPG side.
Mhm.
Within all of our core ingredients, of course, we are gluten-free. We've really been working with that supply chain to be getting it to certified gluten-free for everything, especially in the oat side. That can be a little bit tricky, but when you get a good one, you're set for a while. So we are very heavily, I would say, credentialed, but our most important is absolutely the upcycled certification. What they do on that certification side is they look at the resources that are going into this. They look at the alternative place that this would have gone to certify that you are going in and this is not greenwashing. So that certification is super important. This kind of certification was birthed from UFA, which is the Upcycled Food Association. Now, that's a really good community of people that are all deeply invested in this, personally, professionally. Maybe they have a big background in fruit and produce distribution, or maybe they've been in CPG for a long time, or maybe they're just a really awesome copywriter that cares about this. So it brings all these people together with kind of the same full utilization mentality, and that's really what makes magic happen. So both of those things are really important for us in communicating to our consumers. That being said, though, like I mentioned earlier, every stream is so different. And so every upcycled brand must tell their own story. And so being able to tell that effectively is super important to us. And it varies a lot from us to maybe another upcycled brand.
Yeah. And I like the individualization that you're using with each of the different partners that you're gaining in the manufacturing area so that you can be particular about what it is you're getting from them and how you're utilizing that. So that's great. You had a story you wanted to tell related to upcycling, having to do with pretzels. I'd like to hear it.
Yes. Groundwork on this.
Okay.
So when we're really choosing, because we get a question a lot of like, how did you choose your ingredients? Because they're similar, but they're not all exactly the same. And we really chose our ingredients for their nutritional density as well as how they perform. So for instance, as mentioned, we have our oat milk flour that's about 50% protein. So our existential crisis is, do we market this as a flour or as a protein? And I don't know if we figured that out yet. On the flip side of this, we also have our corn flour, and that's like a very starchy flour. And so it's like, is this a starch or is this a flour? And so all of these things have a little bit of a different background and different story to tell, but we chose them because they either have a very nutritional punch or they perform very well, or both, ideally. So that's how we choose it. Another piece of this, though, is the sealing of the product. So how much could we physically produce within the industry? Like how much is actually going to waste right now of this raw material?
Oh.
And we always say you really need both sides of that nutrition and function and the scale. You need to be picking a high ceiling. That's really where you make the most impact. We say that our impact grows along with us when we look at pounds of food waste, pounds of food saved, water savings, as well as emissions avoided. So we need to be able to grow that impact along with us and have something with a high ceiling, as mentioned. So that is a big thing. Now, on the flip side of this, say you have something that's super nichey, really delicious, but maybe there isn't a high ceiling. And I've seen that before, and it's super, super tough. My role before Renewal Mill was at Imperfect Foods, and we launched a number of private label products that were upcycled. And one of our biggest releases in this world was our chocolate covered broken pretzel pieces. And this sold very, very well. This was really in like the high sales period of private label upcycled products at Renewal Mill, or at Imperfect. We were launching a bunch of these, and this was the front runner at all times. And we always said to ourselves, wow, this is selling so well. We're sourcing so many of these broken pretzels. What happens if we run out of broken pretzels? Do you break more pretzels? And so that is the giant, like that is the existential crisis of the general industry, is if you max out your supply, what do you do?
Do you on purpose create some artificial supply, like take whole pretzels and break them?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a whole different, yeah, you're right. That would be a whole different problem.
Yeah, so it's a lovely problem to have when you're selling really well. It also just means in a perfect world, you want to be organizing your supply chain and making as many partnerships as possible so you can consolidate that source and make something that is consistent. Because that's really the essence of full utilization. And full utilization is a point. It's really tough to go beyond that. And so I really kind of look at ours feeling very spoiled, because as the oat milk industry grows, as the soy milk industry grows, as people keep eating cornmeal, pineapples, and green bananas, so will our impact, because that is the ceiling that grows along with us. So yes, I'd say like both of those things are super important, and that just illustrates what happens if and when you max something out, and really making as many touch points as possible to be able to keep raising that ceiling for yourself.
Yeah, Lydia, thanks for bringing that out, because I know we have a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to our show as well. Yeah. A lot of them are in the food industry, some of them aren't, but I think that's a good rule to think about either way as you're considering what your sourcing is, and especially when you're dealing with food and side streams of other manufacturing processes as you are, really important to measure that impact, because you could have, like you said, the greatest product in the world that's a result, but if you can't get the source material, you're limited. And so, yeah, having that high ceiling, that's a great words of wisdom. Well, I've just really enjoyed learning about what Renewal Mill is doing. Sounds like you're on a great trajectory, making partnerships, scaling, and I think, moving forward with the business, I would like to know, what is something that you would like to tell our audience about what has helped you along the way, as a company that's coming up in the industry? Like, are there tools that have helped you? Are there situations or processes that you've developed, or what would you like to? I guess I'm asking you to pay it forward a little bit.
I certainly can. I think within the industry, we have been very supported by the food industry itself. If we look at somebody like Whole Foods, we were named a top trend 2 years in a row,
Oh,
and they really leaned into upcycled and supported a lot of upcycled businesses. They helped us go national and scale national very early on in our business. And so that was a very big leap for us, and we really appreciate that partnership with them as a retailer. Beyond this, we also really appreciate just some of the different groups that we've been a part of. I mentioned UFA earlier, but without UFA, we wouldn't be able to solve a number of the problems that we've hit as a business. So they've been really supportive for us and thinking about things and understanding the unique challenges of being an upcycled. Personally, for me, I really appreciate working with a woman-owned and run business now. A lot of my background has been in very male-dominated environments, and so being able to work with women has been wonderful for me personally. And so we have a really great group here that I get to learn a lot from. We have an excellent team, and so I think that just internally as well, we've all been working really hard and have our hearts in the right place on this. So.
yeah, nice. And I love to highlight a woman-owned business, and especially a woman at your level as president of the company, just to inspire other entrepreneurs out there who might be thinking about taking the helm of their own business, and just as a way of encouragement and seeing another success. So thanks for sharing that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think this is definitely a unique path to go down going into upcycled foods. But I always tell people, if you have a passion for this and you have an understanding of your specific corner of the food system, there's really no limit to how far you can go. You just want to make sure that you understand the specific area that you're in. So good stuff.
Exactly. And ask for help along the way. Like
Yeah.
you're talking about some of the other partners that you brought in, UFA, different ones to help you make sure you're keeping your mission intact and following what you originally started, and keeping focused on the business aspects. So that's really great. Thank you so much for being on our show and sharing with us, Lydia. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great day.
Thank you. And thanks to our audience for watching and listening. If you want to subscribe to us on YouTube or on any of the podcast channels, and leave us a comment, we answer everyone. We would love to hear from you and what you think about this episode with Lydia. Until next time, I'm Pam Line-Miller.
Thanks for listening to Future Foodcast. Future Foodcast is powered by Farm to Plate, the leading food blockchain platform. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to stay up to date with the very latest innovations in the food industry.